Hey, I'm Jay from Team 125 Overland, and today I'm going to show you how I solder connections. So let's talk about soldering. Soldering is a great way to make an excellent electrical connection. There's a lot of reasons why you should solder a connection. The first one is you can't get a better connection between two wires than actually soldering it together. When you do this, it's actually protected from the elements. You can avoid corrosion and the actual connection to become bad and break apart. Butt connectors actually take up more room. When you solder a wire, it's actually more compact and you actually fit in a smaller area. Soldering is also cheaper. Butt connectors cost a certain amount of money, and that money adds up over time. Once you buy your solder and have your equipment that you actually need, you won't have to worry too much about spending money. Additionally, too, when you have a problem electrical, it's one less thing to diagnose. Let's say you have a light, for instance. You have the switch, you might have the relay, and then you have the wire going to the light. Well, if the light stops working, you have to diagnose and figure out what it is. If you have a bunch of butt connectors that connect that wire, chances are one of those could be also corroded too. That's just another problem in a wiring circuit. So if you solder the wire, it's going to be a better connection and you won't have to worry about it breaking. Soldering does take a little bit of time to actually learn how to do and does take a little bit of practice. There are some cons to soldering too. It does require more skill. It takes a little bit to actually practice, and it takes a little bit to kind of manipulate the heat gun, whatever the case may be. One other thing too, it actually is riskier than a butt connector, obviously, because you can burn yourself. If you're working in a very confined space, things can catch fire. I've had paper catch on fire before, so you need to be a little bit more careful. One problem with soldering as well is it's extremely time consuming. It does take up, it's very super simple to put on a butt connector, but the thing is that it does take up a little more time to actually solder. If you make a mistake soldering a wire, you have to actually cut out a bigger section of that wire. That is sort of a problem. As opposed to a butt connector, you snip off the butt connector, you might run out of wire. When you're working with switches and wiring harnesses, that could be kind of an issue. Overall though, soldering is the best connection you could possibly get. It's the best for long term. It's the best for something exposed to elements. If you're dealing with wiring outside the interior of the cab, it's best to solder it. If you're in Michigan like me, you've got all those elements, you got all that salt. If it's a butt connector, it's gonna get corroded and break down. Soldering connections do not break down. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna talk a little bit about some of the tools you actually need to solder. These are my favorite wire strippers to use. I like these wire strippers the best. I don't know what kind they're called, but they're kind of called the clippy kind. These are the ones I like the most. There are other kinds of wire strippers like these. I don't like these ones because they rip off the strands of the wire. So I wouldn't recommend actually using these kind. Another important tool to have is a set of wire cutters or dikes. These ones are made by, I forget the company, something K-Tools I think it is. You can get these on Amazon. I'm gonna put all the links in the description for all these tools. These are really good and they can actually cut through some pretty thick wire. I've had these for about 20 years and they actually just recently broke, but they still cut. Additionally too, they have the little crimp on the inside that allows you to still do butt connectors if you so choose. This is my soldering iron. You've probably seen the electrical ones. I do not recommend electrical ones whatsoever. Electrical ones are horrible. They take forever to heat up. They're hard to deal with. They, you don't want something that hot laying around. It sucks having a cord. They're cheaper, but no, they're very unreliable. I don't like them at all. This one's actually made by Dremel. I think it's about 30 bucks or so. I've had this one for a couple years. It runs off butane. It is fantastic. I love this one. It can do heat shrink. It comes with multiple tips. Comes in a wonderful case. Can't recommend it enough. This one's been absolutely fantastic. I would spend much more money on this than what I did spend on it. So it really is good. You're gonna need some solder. There is acid core and rosin core. You do want to use a rosin core. That's going to give you a better connection versus acid core. You'll need some butane for your torches and your actual soldering iron. Torch, this is for shrink tube. And you'll need some shrink tube for sealing the wire. So we're going to start off with this simple strip of wire. We're going to cut it in half. We're going to resolder it. You want to strip both ends. And you want to allow yourself plenty of room to work with those wires. I give mine a little bit of a twist. Now, if you search on YouTube, there is a video that shows you how NASA likes their wires twisted. I don't get that fancy. So we're gonna use this piece of shrink tube to seal up the wire. So you do wanna slip this over the wire before you get going. I just try to have it a little bit bigger than the wire. They do make multiple sizes. You don't want to go too big, and you definitely don't want to go too small. First thing you want to do is take the wire, and what I usually do with mine is I do a crisscross like this, and I twist them around like this. And I make sure that the ends of the wire are kind of rolled over. That way it doesn't leave any sharp edges on there, and that's what I usually work with right there. Next thing you want to do is take a little bit of solder off your roll. Just breaks right off. You want to start up your torch. This one has a lock on it and actually has an adjuster for how hot you want it. When you see it glow, you know it's on. If you're worried about something on a surface, just stick a pair of pliers or anything just like that. These torches heat up really super fast. You want to be extremely careful because they do get super hot. Just be careful not to burn yourself, okay? Once it's heated up enough, you want to do what I call tinning the tip. You just take a little solder, roll it around the tip. When it melts, you know it's hot enough. You can take the torch or you can put the wire on top just like that. So take it and make sure you're putting it on the tip, not the wire. And once it gets starting saturating the wire, that's when the heat will transmit through the wire, and you can take the solder and just roll it into the wire. Now you know the joint is good and soldered once the solder itself seeps into the wire. And you can really see it seep in there. And the wire itself is thoroughly saturated. So that's connection soldered. You want to take your soldering iron and put it off the side. Make sure you don't put on anything that could burn. Give this a second to cool before you put your heat shrink on there. And once it's cool, take your heat shrink, roll it over the joint like that. Take your torch. You don't need it like this. This will set the heat shrink on fire. You want it to be about like yay. All right, you don't want it super hot. Go all around the joint like that and get a good solid seal. That's nice. And you see how strong it is? It's sealed from the elements. We're not going to get any water in there. Even if we did, the joint itself won't corrode because it's now one solid piece. It still retains most of its flexibility and its excellent connection. So every connection on my truck is soldered. If it's something that I did electrical wise, I soldered every connection. Yes, it took a long time. Yes, it was a pain. But you know what though? I know it's not my wiring if there's a problem. I know that this connection, I don't need to worry about anymore. It's not going to ground. It's not going to break apart. If you do it correctly, this will last the lifetime of the wire, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. So whether you solder or not is really kind of ultimately up to you. I think it's fun. I think it saves money. I think it's nice and reliable. So it's your choice. Once again, as always, thank you so much for watching my channel. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my channel. Please like this video. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.